When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
He just stood there, staring at me. I was getting very nervous at this point and shut the door. He walked down the steps and just stood in my backyard, staring at the house.
The second I was out of that man's eyesight, I burst into tears.
Throughout all this harassment, Jeff had become a shell of himself, and I felt horrible for him.
From Killer Podcasts, true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed. Hello, and welcome back to the show. This week, we're bringing you 4 stories that will give you the heebie-jeebies. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror. First, a story narrated by Terra Ashe from Reddit user Skippy Uber. The only photo you're getting today is a mugshot.
This happened back in October, and it was the most in danger I've ever felt in my life. I work at a typical photo studio that's placed within a retail store in a mall. Not gonna name which store, but your first guess is probably correct. On this particular day, I was scheduled to work our closing hours, 3 to 7. Unless there's an oversaturation of appointments on a particular day, there's usually just one employee working at a time. The studio is in the basement of the 2-floor retail store tucked away in a little back corner. On this particular day, as I was coming in to close the studio, my manager Stephanie and another coworker were there, and they were both getting off at 3:30. I clocked in and started chatting with Stephanie about the upcoming appointments. There was one family currently in the camera room, and they were running a little behind. Stephanie told me about my assigned family and also encouraged me to get what's called a pull-in. That's basically where we try to get customers from the retail store to come take photos in whatever they're wearing in exchange for 2 free photos. As we were talking, I noticed a man wearing what looked like a prison uniform and holding a crowbar. It definitely didn't look real, though. It looked like a costume. It was October, so it wasn't crazy that he was wearing a costume. It wasn't that close to Halloween, though, so I thought it was a bit weird, since he didn't have an appointment and was wandering around the practically barren area of the store next to the studio. I don't think Stephanie noticed how oddly he was acting because she asked him if he wanted to come in for some photos. She mentioned he already had the costume, so it would be perfect. I wasn't paying close attention to their conversation as I was checking in the next family for their appointment. Stephanie walked by as I was heading in to set up the studio and let me know that the guy was interested in photos after this appointment. The family I was working with was great and things went smoothly, but I noticed during the session that the strange guy had sat on the bench right next to the photo studio. No big deal. This bench is usually used for parents to set down their belongings, but it's not like he was expected to know that. Stephanie popped into the photo room one last time before she left and said, "Hey, I'm getting some weird vibes from that guy you're gonna photograph, so I'm gonna have Andrew come by and check to make sure everything's all right." After taking the photos, it takes a few minutes for me to edit them. The family went and sat down on the bench to wait while I stayed in the camera room touching up the photos. At this point, the guy walked into the studio and asked me when it was his turn. I then noticed that his crowbar was real, not a prop. The way he was swinging it around started making me nervous. I told him I could help him in a minute and go wait outside the studio. He sat back down on the bench and folded over himself. He'd nod off, then snap back up all of a sudden. I'm not stupid and knew he was on drugs. It was just me, him, and a single mom with her 2 children. I stopped paying attention to my editing and started paying attention to him. I could tell he was making this family uncomfortable. He started waving around the crowbar dangerously, and I became concerned about the glass walls as well as my own safety. He walked back into the studio a few times and wouldn't take no for an answer. He kept barging in and asking, "When are you gonna take my picture?" with a horrifying, dead look on his face. I finally finished editing the family's photos and was practically shaking at the checkout. The mom I was working with clocked the situation pretty quickly. The guy kept peering over our shoulders at the computer trying to see her photos. She asked loudly, "Can I help you?" The guy just rambled about how he was supposed to be getting his picture taken. She whispered to me, asking if I was okay, but I was sure he could hear her. I took out their appointment paper and started talking to her about the price, but on the paper, I wrote that the guy wasn't leaving and that my manager, Andrew, was nowhere to be seen. At this point, it had been an hour and a half since Stephanie and my other coworker had left. Usually, someone wouldn't wait around that long to get their photo taken. Instead, they'd leave and come back at the time we told them. The mom was on edge as I completed her transaction. I felt completely paralyzed. I was one card swipe away from being alone in this tiny studio with a crazy, drugged-out man with a real metal crowbar. I went to scan her card with our machine, and by the grace of God, her card didn't go through in our system. If the card won't scan on the local system, we have to reprint the transaction and check out at a regular register inside the store. I saw this moment as an out. I grabbed the printed transaction and walked her over to the registers in our salon. The second I was out of that man's eyesight, I burst into tears. I explained what was happening to one of the salon guys. He immediately paged Andrew and asked me if I'd like to wait in the salon. I gladly agreed. The mom who was helping me throughout the whole experience told me afterwards that there was no way she was going to leave me alone with him no matter what. That was very reassuring to hear. I had to wait patiently for them to kick him out. Andrew grabbed another guy and they both went to confront the man. After about 15 minutes, I peeked out to see if the guy had left the studio, and to my relief, he was gone. Thank God I didn't have any other appointments that night, but I still had to sit alone in the studio for the rest of the evening. Every time the elevator dinged, it startled me a bit. It took a while to recover from this, and I still get uneasy working alone sometimes. I think the scariest part of all is the part I didn't see. About 45 minutes after the incident, Andrew came by to check on me. I asked him about the guy and how kicking him out went. He told me that the man became absolutely furious, causing a complete scene. He threw his crowbar to the ground right next to Andrew. After getting mall security over to help, they successfully escorted him out. Frankly, I was pretty pissed at Stephanie for leaving me alone to deal with this guy, since she was the one who suggested he get his picture taken in the first place. I don't think she saw it as escalating that far, but that's not really an excuse. I was also mad that Andrew hadn't come to check out the situation right away after Stephanie had asked him to. He even asked me if I had asked the guy to leave. He's a fully grown man and I'm a petite teenage girl. The situation was entirely mishandled. When I told my mom and boyfriend about it, they were both pissed. I've been job hunting since I no longer feel comfortable working alone in a store that put me in such a vulnerable position.
This next story comes from disturbed listener Jared. If you have a story you'd like to send us, go to disturbedpodcast.com/submit. This story is narrated by Brandon Alexander Smith. Country roads take me home, away from West Virginia.
The year was 2018. I was helping a college friend, Nova, move down to Virginia Beach from Cleveland, Ohio during our summer break. I was driving a moving truck with Nova's friend Mia in the passenger seat beside me. Nova was driving her car ahead of us, but she eventually had to speed ahead to meet a deadline. The moving truck had a top speed of 70 miles per hour, but since it was my first time driving one, I was taking it easy on the gas. About 5 hours into the 12-hour drive, we were taking the scenic route to avoid tolls. I began to feel fatigued and told my passenger we should switch soon. That was when Mia told me that she didn't have a driver's license. I'd assumed the entire reason we were traveling together was so we could take shifts. At this point in the journey, it was already late at night, and we were deep in the West Virginia mountains. There was nothing but winding roads and dense forests as far as the eye could see. Not a single passing headlight to reassure us we were still on Earth and hadn't been whisked away into some Twilight Zone pocket dimension. Exhaustion gripped me, and I knew I had to stop and get some sleep. I was forced to take the nearest exit off the highway and enter a small backwater town called Sandstone. The place was rustic and eerie. It definitely gave me a Deliverance vibe. You could practically hear the banjos in the distance among the gnarled trees and shabby infrastructure. We pulled into a gas station with a gravel lot to rest. The pumps seemed like they were straight out of the 1950s. Rusty, chipped paint, and analog dispensers, the type with the dials. The station's only entrance was in front of train tracks, and a minute after we pulled in, a long train rumbled past, trapping us there. The slow chugging created a rhythmic beat against the sound of a million crickets. A heavy fog had settled over the gas station, and the only visible building in the lot was a dilapidated diner with a hand-painted sign that read, "We buy and sell live bait." After about 15 minutes, the train finally passed. I felt a twinge of relief now that our escape route had opened. We hunkered down, but I slept very lightly, anxiously, clutching a pocket knife in my hand. After an hour of resting, a red pickup truck came speeding into the station and screeched to a halt near the entrance. It had one of those small amber spinning lights on the top, the kind held on by a magnet. A portly man jumped out, stumbled slightly, and then proceeded to urinate for a full 30 seconds on his front tire before promptly hopping back into the driver's seat and speeding off, gravel kicking up behind him. Mia and I exchanged glances. Okay, that was weird. As it turns out, there was one other building behind us. A single house, mostly obscured by the dense fog. At some point in the night, an attic light flicked on. A silhouette appeared in the window, surrounded by a halo of pale yellow light. A man, motionless, just standing there, staring in our direction for at least 15 minutes. At that point, I felt as if I had slammed a double shot of espresso. My exhaustion vanished, replaced by a burning fight or flight response. Every nerve in my body screamed, "Leave." I turned the key in the ignition, half expecting the engine to sputter and choke like a cheap horror trope. Instead, it roared to life. Within 10 minutes, we were back on the highway. Within an hour, we found a rest stop, one with several other travelers parked nearby. The fatigue hit me again like a freight train. And for the first time that night, I finally got some well-deserved sleep.
You're listening to Disturbed. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Welcome back to the podcast. Our next story is about coming face to face with an unhinged stalker.
Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who is truly crazy? Not someone who just does off-the-wall things or acts different, but is genuinely insane? I have, and it terrified me. Let me back up. I work for a large corporation. I have a couple of different bosses, but the one I formed a genuine friendship with is named Jeff. Jeff is a very laid-back, go-with-the-flow type of guy with a great sense of humor. He is single with no children. Not long after I started working for the company, we became friends, and he often stops by my desk to chat. It was about a year ago that he stopped by one morning, and I immediately knew he was not himself. He seemed distant and stressed, which is unusual for him. When I asked what was wrong, he told me he needed to speak with me about a situation. Of course, I immediately was concerned and urged him to go on. He explained that a few years ago, long before I started at the company, another woman named Lauren began working there. She was not in our department, but did work in a position that required her to interact with leadership in our department, including Jeff. Jeff explained that his interactions with Lauren were infrequent, but she was polite and professional anytime they did speak. She worked for the company for less than a year and then left after announcing she was getting married and moving. That was that. He didn't encounter her again until a couple of weeks prior, when he received a friend request from her on social media. He explained he didn't think much of it and accepted it, as he was Facebook friends with many colleagues, both past and present. Then she messaged him. At first, it was a casual chat, and she seemed to just want to catch up. He learned that she had divorced and wanted to move back to our town. The conversation carried on normally until she asked if he'd join her for dinner when she came back to town to visit in a couple of days. Jeff politely declined her offer, and at first, she took it well, but things quickly went downhill. Jeff stopped responding shortly after declining the dinner invitation, and within a few hours, Lauren was sending him erratic and insulting messages. Everything from calling him a wimpy bitch to saying she was the best thing he could hope for and he blew any chance he had with her. He figured they were drunk texts, but they still bothered him, so he blocked her. He figured that was the end of it. How very wrong he was. She then began emailing both his personal and work email, pleading for another chance, saying she was drunk and didn't mean it, saying she needed to see him, and so on. I got to read a lot of these myself when I was later asked to print them off for him for evidence. The reason he was telling me about this on that particular day was because he received a message request from Lauren's sister Beth, saying she needed to talk to him about Lauren, and it was urgent. He accepted and responded to Beth's message. She told him something snapped in Lauren when she went through her divorce, and she became fixated on a man she called Jeff. Beth explained she tried to talk some sense into Lauren when everything fizzled out with her initial conversation with Jeff. But Lauren wasn't having it. Lauren told Beth he was her soulmate, and she was going after him. Beth then explained that Lauren had flown into our town and was staying at a hotel close to our company and was planning to visit him at work. Beth's warning was true. When Jeff came into work the next morning, he found Lauren standing outside his office. She immediately ran to him and pulled him into an awkward hug. Jeff smelled alcohol on her and immediately pulled away. She explained she was here to get her old job back and needed to see him. She brought him presents, including gift cards, snacks, and a picture of herself. Jeff refused these gifts, but she became forceful and insisted he keep them. Jeff got away from her shortly after, saying he had a meeting. He went to HR to explain the situation and how he absolutely did not want her to be hired there again. He provided me a copy of the picture she left for him and said if I saw her anywhere around company property, to notify security. Beth later sent Jeff a picture of Lauren, dressed as a man, that Lauren had sent her, saying, "I'm wearing a disguise so I can watch him without him knowing it's me." Again, all this happened nearly a year ago. Things only escalated from there. Lauren made multiple trips back to our town and would try to catch Jeff in the company parking lot. He found multiple letters on his vehicle from her, some of which made no sense. She once left him 2 letters that were exactly the same, word for word, but one was in cursive and one was in print. Jeff blocked numerous email accounts only for her to make new ones. She professed her love for him and begged him to want her. She stated she made him her beneficiary if anything were to happen to her. She even sent emails that were clearly from her, but claimed to be from other men that wanted her and needed him to release her so that she could love them instead. Again, I got to read all of this when printing evidence. She eventually got his personal cell phone number somehow and began calling and texting him constantly. He blocked the numbers only for new ones to come through. This eventually ended up in court and a protective order was granted. This did bring things to a halt for a while. Throughout all this harassment, Jeff had become a shell of himself, and I felt horrible for him. After the relief of the protective order, he was finally back to his old self again, until the week after Valentine's Day. On Monday morning, Jeff came by my desk, and I could tell right away he was not happy. Before I could say a word, he demanded to know who placed all those letters on his desk. I was confused, as I had no clue what he was talking about. I said as much, and he explained there was a thick stack of letters and handmade Valentine's cards on his desk from Lauren. We later found out they'd been stuffed under his door, and the housekeeper found them scattered on his office floor on Friday night when she went in to clean. She didn't know what they were and just picked them up and neatly placed them on his desk. As troubling as this pile of unwanted love letters was, wondering how Lauren had gotten into the building in the first place was even more unsettling. Jeff planned to take the letters to the police station, but he first needed to go back to his office to finish some things up. I was working away at my desk when suddenly I received a call from him. Upon answering, I heard Jeff's panicked voice saying, "She's here." He'd just gotten a knock at his office door and opened it to find her standing there, grinning at him. He told her he was calling the police and slammed the door in her face and locked it. I foolishly assumed she'd bail after he told her he was calling the cops. I got up from my desk and headed down the hall to Jeff's office to check on him and wait for the police to arrive. I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw her. She was sitting on the floor outside of his office, humming to herself. She slowly turned her head to look at me. I can't explain the knot that formed in my stomach as our eyes locked. She looked a lot like the picture Jeff had given me, but her eyes were different. They were dark. There wasn't that lively spark that you usually see in people's eyes. It was like they were hollow, void of any normalcy. Her lips slightly twitched up to a smile. Then she slowly turned her head back towards Jeff's door and resumed humming. I booked it. I absolutely darted back to my desk. Thankfully, the police arrived shortly after. She didn't put up a fight. She calmly allowed them to arrest her and walked away willingly with them, still humming. She's still in jail for violating the protective order. Jeff and I are both very shaken by the experience. I will never forget that look in her eyes. It was like staring into an abyss of true insanity.
Our final story is narrated by Brian Jeffords from r/Let's Not Meet. Stay out of the cellar.
I graduated college at age 24, and I really wanted to get out and try living alone. Luckily for me, my grandma had asked to be moved into an assisted living center about a year prior, so I asked my parents if I could live in her house. They talked it over with my grandma, and she agreed it would be nice to have someone living there after a year of it sitting empty. The house was in kind of an up-and-coming area, but still had its rough spots. I was so excited to do a walkthrough to see how I was going to set up my things. It was a shotgun-style home with a cellar that could only be accessed from the outside. While I was walking through the house, I swore I kept hearing noises. I finally realized they were coming from the basement. I called the police, and they came out and escorted 6 people from the cellar. And they were squatters that had been living there. The cops took out all the drugs and anything else illegal they found. After they left, I went down there to find all kinds of stuff spray painted all over the walls. It was just a concrete cellar where the water heater and HVAC were, so I wouldn't have really cared, except that it seemed to be kind of satanic. I don't know anything about that stuff, but there were a couple pentagrams and a chalk circle on the floor. Cops didn't really have anything to say about it. They didn't know either. I poured some water on the floor to wash away the circle, but the walls I just left as they were. Fast forward a few months of me living there, and I had forgotten all about it. I'd started dating my future wife, and one night when she was over, We were in the bathroom brushing our teeth when a knock came from the back door. I ignored it at first, but then it came again. It was 1 a.m. and this was my back door. Someone had come into my backyard by opening the fence gate. I grabbed my gun, just in case, and went to the door, keeping the weapon out of view. Some guy was standing on the porch. I opened the interior wooden door, but kept the outside storm door shut and locked. I asked what he was here for, since it was so late. All he said was,
"Is Christina here?"
I told him he had the wrong house, and all he said was,
"Oh, so do you want me to leave?"
I told him he better leave and not come back. He just stood there, staring at me. I was getting very nervous at this point and shut the door. He walked down the steps and just stood in my backyard, staring at the house. Then he tried to open the cellar doors. I had padlocked them, so he soon gave up. I opened the back window and told him to get out of here before the cops show up or he gets shot, or both. Again, he just stared, but eventually left. I didn't sleep that night. A couple months later, my girlfriend told me the guy was back, just standing in my backyard staring at the house. This time it was broad daylight. I called the cops. He tried the cellar doors again, but left before the police showed up. The next day, I went down to the cellar to see if something had been left behind that he was trying to get, but I found nothing. It was just a damp, disgusting cellar with a dirt floor. I have zero idea why he wanted to get in there. I highly doubt the satanic stuff had anything to do with it. It just made the whole thing creepier. I unfortunately had to move out sometime later, as I could no longer afford it, but I'm glad I never saw the guy again.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producer is Elizabeth Flood. Our sound designer and audio engineer is Nathan Corson. Executive producers Bridget Coyne and Noah Fouts. Until next time, stay safe out there.
Do you enjoy science, spooky stories, and all things paranormal? We do too.
While we would love for most paranormal stories to be true, we are here to tell you that they probably aren't. But that doesn't make them any less fun to speculate about.
We are the Spooky Science Sisters podcast. In this podcast, we bring you bi-weekly discussions on possible scientific explanations behind the supernatural. Backed up by research articles and other credible sources, we do deep dives into things like archaeology and physics, and share in-depth discussions with topic experts.
Visit us at SpookyScienceSisters.com to listen to a couple of skeptics debunk some of your favorite alien encounters, cryptid sightings, and ghost stories with science, sass, and a significant amount of laughter.
Thank you, and stay spooky.